So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Local Insurance Pools, What Municipalities Should Consider. My name is Judy DeZal, and I'm the Director of AMO's Enterprise Center, Business Partnerships, and I'm also responsible for LAS, AMO's Business Services arm. The high level of interest in today's webinar reminds me how topical municipal insurance has been over the past few years, and particularly in the last year. Municipalities have asked LAS to look into ways to help stabilize insurance costs, but there are many factors currently impacting premiums, from a low yielding bond market globally to climate change and the pandemic, and also joint and several. Insurance is complex, and many of the factors that drive insurance premiums are global in scale. In looking for ways to help municipalities, LES is looking to focus on activities municipalities can control in local risk management programs. To better understand what areas municipalities are looking for help in, LES asked for municipal insights through a survey done in February 2021. The top requests from the survey were more risk management best practices, support on RFPs for brokers, and support on claim management. You also told us you're actively looking for alternatives to traditional insurance. Insurance pools being one example provided, hence the reason for today's webinar. So I just also wanted briefly to introduce you to a little bit of what LAS is also doing right now in terms of municipal insurance. We've also established a risk management working group. These are a group of individuals who work in risk management in some of the largest municipalities across the province. And they've come together to help identify and share risk management best practices that we then in turn can share with you. The group met for the first time this past Monday, and we're working on some practical activities municipalities, regardless of your size, can do to maximize your local risk management programs. So watch for some of that to come over the next couple of months as the group does its work. We've also taken further action by issuing an RFP yesterday, looking for a claim management software provider to work with LES. The goal is having a vendor in place by summer that offers a product scalable to small and medium-sized municipalities to provide the support you're asking for on claim management. LES has long partnered with intact public entities, and I bet, Larry, that I would trip on it, and I did.
I will.
Only known as Frank Cowan Company, on access to their Center of Excellence, which provides relevant professional information on important risk issues. We've also partnered on the Institute of Municipal Risk Management, which offers online courses for both municipal staff and council on risk management. And we've also long partnered with them on the Risk Management Symposium, which is scheduled for a virtual event for October 4th and 5th this year. So when we were looking to educate and talk about insurance pools, it made sense to reach out to intact public entities when we started to think about this webinar. We have with us today Larry Ryan. Larry is the president and principal broker of Intact Public Entities. Larry provides a unique perspective on the municipal insurance environment. Larry has worked in the municipal sector for over 25 years. Prior to his current role, Larry was the CFO for the region of Waterloo. The region and its area municipalities are one of two insurance pools currently operational in Ontario. Larry brings two perspectives to today's webinar topic that I think you will find beneficial as you learn more about insurance pools. Thank you, Larry, for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Judy, and it's really great to be here. I hope it will be informative for you folks. I'm going to try to cover a lot of material. The first part is going to be about, the environment, and that should take me about 15 minutes and hopefully spend about, 30 minutes on pools themselves. So, okay, so just a little bit about the brand, and there's something I know that I'll likely trip over as I work through this presentation. So Frank Cowan is now called Intact Public Entities. This was officially launched last week. As some of you may be aware, the Frank Cowan Company was sold in 2019, and part of the agreement of the sales agreement was the name wasn't sold, so we have to find a new name. Our new partner is Intact, and what I want to assure you is basically it's the same expertise and same team. So Frank Cowan, so Intact Public Entities, I'm going to struggle with that myself, is separately a separated company. We still are an MGA. We still specialize in municipal insurance. So our structure hasn't changed at all. It's the same people, same service. So we're proud of that. But what's actually is unique in this situation is Intact brings a unique perspective and a unique assistance to us. So at the end of the day, Intact is a very large P&C company. They have a lot of financial backing, and it really helps us from a long-term perspective. If you have a strong owner and strong lead partner, it really helps in securing markets. So that's going to be an advantage for us. So Frank Cowan has been in the business for 94 years, and hopefully now as Intact Public Entities, we'll have another 94 years of service. So agenda, very quickly, I'll talk about the market. That's the hot topic. Why it's happened. I'll talk about the cost of claims. Really quickly about what municipalities can do. And one of those things that municipality can do is local pools. And I'll spend about half an hour on local pools. So the insurance cycle. So the insurance cycle is basically historically either hard or soft market. That's for the entire cycle. That's for all commercial and personal insurance. It has an international reach. This is being felt in Europe. This is something felt all across North America. It hits all lines: property, auto, liability. It hits all segments. It hits the financial sector, the construction industry, and as well public entities in the municipal sector. So a little bit about hard markets. There's been about 4 since the 1970s, so not that often do we see a hard market. And typically hard markets are short. They have a short duration of 2 and 3 years. Soft markets typically are longer. So when we look at the last hard market, so currently we are in a hard market. The last hard market occurred after 9/11. And then the soft market started after that. So up till about 2019, we were in a soft market at about 15 years. So that's a long period for a soft market. Now we're in a hard market, and the expectation is, we'll be in a hard market till at least 2022. It's hard to forecast. Forecasters are typically wrong, but when you read the tea leaves, if you will, we'll see the hard market kind of continuing until 2022. So I talked about kind of hard market, but what are the characteristics of hard markets and soft markets? So what does it mean? What does it look like? So soft markets. So previously to the hard market, 15 years of a soft market. What do you see in a soft market? More competition. So in the municipal sector, typically there's 4 competitors in the market sector, municipal market space in Ontario. Often in the soft market, you'll see all 4 markets bid. So there's more competition. Because there's more competition, typically lower rates. And sometimes you go for an RFP, you might see some savings. Also as well, more favorable terms. Easier to get property capacity, easier to get higher limits, less exclusions. So, obviously a lot more beneficial, if you will, to the consumer, to municipalities. Then all of a sudden, a hard market comes along, and the hard market is just simply the opposite. There's less competition. So if there's an RFP out there, again, typically there, historically under soft market conditions, you might see 4 bidders. Now you might see 2, you might see 3, rarely see 4. I know we've had some of our clients go to RFP over this hard market, and there was one larger client that only received 1 bid, us as the incumbent. So less competition. And what happens is there's kind of a flight to quality. And insurance companies sometimes will vacate a segment, saying, "I will no longer provide insurance in that segment." So we're going to leave it. We see that quite a bit in the cyberspace. We did have a cyber market that was providing us with cyber insurance in 2019. They picked up and left the North American market, saying not profitable enough, seeing too many losses. We're not going to provide cyber insurance in North America anymore. So you'll see some of that in a hard market. insurance companies become more restrictive. And as well, regarding less competition, sometimes what will happen is you'll see a higher degree of declinations, if you will. So when a company that's still, insurance company still in the insurance market, so for municipalities, they may look at the historical cost or claims history and say, you know what, this one's not hitting the mark for us. Claims are too high in auto or liability or property or whatever the case, they will not provide a bid. So less competition is very commonplace in the hard market. Higher rates, well, clearly you folks understand that. There's a lot more pressure on premiums and rates. And I was just reading an article yesterday where a large broker out of London was quoting what was happening in the commercial space, of which obviously municipalities is part of that commercial space. We're saying last year in Q3, the average commercial rate increase, bottom line, was about 20%. Q4 last year, that moved up to 22%. And then Q1 this year, 18%. So, high double-digit increases, slight dip in Q2. Not sure if that's a trend, Q1. Not sure that's going to be a trend for Q2 and beyond, but that's been the cycle. High rate increases, a lot more higher, potentially higher in 2020. And now we're seeing that continuing in 2021 Q1 at 18%. So again, those are commercial rates. You'll see those vary from industry to industry. Cyber's, off the charts, up around 30%. In the construction industry, 40%. Professional, up around 40% as well. So large variation there in some of the segments. And then in terms of restrictive terms, harder to get property capacity in hard markets. You might see some challenges with limits. You might see more exclusions. So those are typical things that happen in a hard market. So that's the environment we're in. We're in a hard market right now. Rates are up and there's less competition. Okay, so what causes a hard market? So this is kind of back to basics. It's all about fundamentals. Claims drive premiums. So higher claims, higher premiums, as simple as that. But from an insurance company's perspective, there's two ways that insurance companies earn revenue, make profits. One is their underwriting profits. So it's simply, premiums less claims equal your underwriting profit, less including expenses. And then investment returns. So they also have a significant amount of investment returns in their income statements. So those are the two areas where insurance companies make money. To look at claims specifically, so when we look at the top drivers of claims, these are municipal drivers, but a lot of these cross multiple segments across the insurance entire industry. But these are the things that we've been kind of, I'll say, almost preaching about for the last decade. These factors are going up. Climate change, big property losses. So when you look at the Canadian environment, over the last 10 years, the 8 of the highest property loss years have been over the last decade. So we're seeing a higher frequency of big losses and a higher severity of property losses. So big impact on the property market. Another big factor, class action suits. They're more frequent, easier to certify, very expensive to defend, and have high costs of those specific types of claims. And as well, the changing legal landscape. I mean, we've been monitoring this for decades. And what used to be a $5 million claim now is a $10 million claim. What used to be contributory negligence assigned to a municipality at 25%, now we're saying at 50%. So the cost of claims is going up. And then the frequency is people are suing more. It used to be people who had a higher degree of individual accountability. Now we're seeing more suits come out. So big driver there. Large transit claims as well. Clearly, you're probably all aware of the high profile claims out of Ottawa. So 2 really large severe claims put a spotlight on the transit policies and auto policies out there. Judy mentioned earlier joint and several, and that's been a long-standing issue back in the day when I was with, on the municipal side. I remember going to committee meetings and talking about passing resolutions to change joint and several liability. That goes back 20-something, 20-something years. But what I also want to say about joint and several liability, it's not the magic bullet. If it's changed, it potentially could help, but clearly all those other factors will still be in play. And one of the other reasons why I'm a little bit leery about joint and several liability having long-term impact is how will the courts, react to joint and several liability? So if at the end of the day, if there's a sympathetic judge and there's a plaintiff who, will likely get an award through the judicial system, will the judges try to find a way? So, is there a claim that should have been at 50% assigned to a municipality? Does that come 60? Does that become 70%? Is the quantum, what it was 10 million, does it become a $15 million claim? So how will the courts react to a change in joint and several liability if there is a change? So we're a bit leery about the impact there, but anyways, just want to provide a little color on that specific issue since it's always a hot topic. And then cyber, the cyber, it used to be 3 or 4 years, not in my backyard, not going to happen. Clearly it's happening everywhere. So frequency is up. I'll talk about frequency and severity a lot during this presentation. So frequency of cyber claims is up, and also severity. So I've read something recently that the cost of a cyber claim has gone up 5-fold over the last 3 years. So they're more frequent and they're more severe. So clearly those drive premiums. So these are some of the big drivers of premiums. We've been talking about this for well over a decade, and frankly, it's come to fruition, if you will, in this hard market. Premiums has to support these increased drivers of claims. The other piece is investment returns. So when you look at investment returns, again, we talked about insurance companies generating profits from investments. They'll have a reserve. It could be a long tail claim, especially in the municipal side. We can have claims that last 5, 10, 15 years. You set up a reserve, you can invest those dollars, and clearly you'll make some investment returns, investment income from that. But if interest rates are at all-time lows, you are not getting those returns that you once did. So because of that, insurance returns are low, investment returns are low, sorry. You'll get more insurance companies more reliant on the underwriting profit above. So they're looking to, premiums minus claims, minus expensive, their underwriting profit to be higher because of lower investment returns. So those are some of the root causes of the hard market. That's why we're here. Just want to go over that to provide a little context, if you will, of why rates are going up. So what can a municipality do? Clearly, it's very difficult for individual municipalities or groups of municipalities to influence the insurance marketplace, but it's important to focus on what you can control, right? So you got to adopt a total cost of risk approach. And what does that mean? Well, look at your risks. Can you eliminate? Can you mitigate risks? And you look at, the claims that happen in the municipal sector: trip and falls, sidewalk claims, MVAs, motor vehicle accidents, big driver MVAs of the cost of claims for municipalities. Have to follow the minimum maintenance standards. Make sure you do. Transit claims are a big driver of some of these auto policies out there. A lot of claims there. Building permits, inspections. Focus on those areas. Find out if you are having, claims in those specific areas. What can you do to reduce your claims, right? And at the end of the day, we always talk about this from a risk management perspective. Good documentation. If you have, you could be following your minimum maintenance standards, plowing the roads when you need to plow the roads. But if you're not documenting that, how does that help you in court? It won't. And if you can't prove that you are following the minimum maintenance standards, you will be held liable. So again, very quick little, actually a bit of a commercial on, how can municipalities, manage, their premiums? If you have better claims results, your premiums will be lower. It's as simple as that, right? So claims below the deductible is another area. If you have relatively high deductibles, then you have to manage those claims. What is your performance on small claims? Are you actually, do you have a good cycle time on those? Are you actually moving them in, moving them out, settling when you have to, going to, court when you have to? So there's a whole, management of your own individual claims. And at the end of the day, education is important. Judy talked about, some of the seminars that are coming up. Really important for all your staff to, adhere to the approved procedures and practices. If you do that, you will likely reduce the level of claims in the future. So those are some of the tools. But one tool that I want to focus in on is local pools. And as Judy alluded to earlier, we have a lot of experience in tech public entities. We insure both local pools that are in play in Ontario. And then I have some personal experience back in the day when I was in the finance department, and we set up the local pool with the area municipalities in Waterloo region. So want to spend a fair amount of time on that for you. Basic concepts of pools. So pool is basically a self-insurance fund suited for organizations who are small to self-insure. They're too small, right? So what happens is you pool various organizations together and get a larger critical mass. Then if you have a larger critical mass, then you have a greater ability to manage your insurance program, okay? So when you look at pools, members typically have similar exposures. You don't start a pool that you're going to have a trucking company come in and you're going to have a hospitality industry provider, come in. You are going to pool with other municipalities. Okay. So pools typically operate like insurance companies, right? But they're not an insurance company. Insurance companies have a lot of regulations to follow, very, very administratively heavy to operate an insurance company. But a pool operates like an insurance company. So they collect premiums from their members based on their losses. They provide, then they have levies that go back to each of those individual participants. They pay for covered losses within their deductibles, and obviously they purchase insurance above the pool deductible. So that's kind of very high-level concepts of local pooling. So one concept I'm going to spend a little bit of time on is loss transfer. So when we look at loss transfer, we're talking about claims. So what claims are the pool? Is the pool going to pay for? The local municipality going to pay for? And what is the insurance company going to pay for? So if you look at that red arrow there, that's, oops, oh boy. Okay, I'm hitting my mouse and I should be hitting my mouse, sorry about that. So if you look at the loss transfer, you can see that severity, that arrow is the cost of claims. So what you want to do in a pool is you want to make sure you are insuring, you are taking care of self-insurance on low cost claims. You can manage those, but the big pops, the big claims, the big MVAs, you want to make sure you are covered from the inability to pay. So that's something you typically would have an insurance company pay for, so those large MVAs. You have three kind of buckets, if you will, in this triangle. In a pool, you will still have a local deductible. So the municipalities will still have, local participating municipalities will still have a deductible. So let's say they have a deductible of $50,000 now, they still will have a $50,000 deductible potentially in a new pool. So they'll still pay for those. But what the pool does is take on the risk between that deductible and a higher level. So there's a transfer of risk to the pool. And let's say the local municipality has a $50,000 deductible. The pool itself may have a $500,000 deductible. So the pool is going to pay for those claims between $500,000 and $50,000 for that municipality. Again, the insurance company will kick in over and above that $500,000 for those larger claims. So we're transferring, the local municipalities transferring risk to the pool, and the pool is transferring risk to the insurance company. So in a pool, you may have varying deductibles by the participant. You may have one municipality coming at $25,000 and maintains that $25,000 in the pool. You may have another larger municipality that maintains a $100,000 deductible, and even larger still, we've seen pool deductibles or individual participants have a $250,000 deductible. So you still have that variability, and you need some, fairly complex actuarial calculations in terms of determining what each individual will pay as a levy to be a participant in the pool. Okay, so this is a pool, structure is all about transferring risk, and you're transferring those cost of claims to a pool and then eventually to an insurance company. Okay, so benefits of local pooling. A well-run pool will have more stable premiums. Higher deductibles do that. Okay, you'll have increased buying power. So it's a group program. So you have a better ability to spread the risk. And as well, you kind of control your own destiny. So you have control over your program, right? So you have greater control over claims. So if you have a $500,000 deductible in a pool, you're going to manage a lot of claims. If you manage those well, then all of a sudden there's a potential to save dollars, if you will, because the insurance company is not having to pay for those, right? Or manage those. So again, a better ability to manage cost of your own specific program. The other benefit is you have the standards for risk management. And if there's one municipality as a risk manager, and now you have the pool, and the pool has a bit of an infrastructure, that risk manager can service all the municipalities within the pool and start managing those risks and mitigating those risks and hopefully eliminating some risks, hopefully better claims performance, right? The other benefit of the pool is retention of earnings on investment capital. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you have a $500,000, let's say $400,000 claim, the pool is managing that. Some of these claims last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So you can invest those dollars and retain the investment, those investment yields within the pool. Now, again, interest rates are lower, but again, you get to retain those earnings. And then the other benefit is from really successful pools, and I'd say the two that are operating in Ontario right now are very successful. If the pool is running well, then there's an opportunity to provide dividends back to the participating municipalities. And I know when I was back on, at the local municipality and we issued a dividend, and then each of the participating municipalities received a portion of that dividend, going back to council, giving money back, really was a very positive experience. You can actually imagine that yourself. So you have that ability, if your pool is running well, your surplus is reasonable, reserves are reasonable, and if you think you might have a little bit of excess cash, give it back to the participating municipalities. Really, really appreciate it, and you get a lot of political mileage out of doing that, quite frankly. And then it's a dividend, so you've heard about reciprocals and OMEX and whatnot. So typically pools don't have retroactive assessments, which has been a bit of a challenge when OMEX was in place. So is pooling a good fit for you? Well, you really need critical mass, right? So you need to get a certain premium level to make that work. So, maybe I can provide a rule of thumb, but maybe a collective of $4 or $5 million of premium, if you will, collectively might give you the critical mass. It all depends on your own, claims history and things like that, but you need to have a larger group to make this work. Similar risk exposure, often, clearly, municipalities have very similar risk exposures, but often sometimes you'll find that things like cyber insurance, even though if you have a pool, cyber insurance is still outside of the pool. Sometimes transit operations are considered outside of a pool. So you may have similar risk exposures, but you still would have the opportunity to say, well, in this case, if we're going to put a pool, cyber's outside, transit's outside, and all these other risks that we have, all the road exposures, things like that, recreational, all within the pool. Geography is important. So is it a good fit for you? So typically, it works well with your neighbors. You know your neighbors well, you have a history of cooperation, or sometimes you have a history of cooperation. Sometimes there's not a history of cooperation. So if you do have a history of cooperation, then it's a good fit for you. But if not, you can understand sometimes, area municipalities with the county and or with the region, sometimes there's not as much cooperation as maybe there could be, and maybe it's not a good fit for your area. Going back to geography, so you know your neighbors. So if you're going to jump into a pool, you likely don't want to go into a pool with another municipality in BC. They may have some quake exposure that's quite a bit different than what you're experiencing in Ontario. So maybe that's not a good fit. So geography, you also want, because of you want to be in cooperating with your partners and somebody who's local. You know them well. You don't know that municipality outside, and maybe in BC again, who has that quake exposure, which is quite a bit different for what you see in Ontario. So, and you also may have some existing purchasing arrangements with municipalities close by, and if that's been working well, again, maybe the next step is a possibility of pooling as well. So, is it a good fit for you? Think about some of those criteria. So there are some startup challenges. You think the pools in generally are a very good insurance structure, quite frankly, but they're hard to start. There are a lot of difficulties in starting, a local pool, and I just want to highlight some of those. So first one is resources. You need to spend some dollars to set it up, right? And likely you're going to need a risk manager to run the day-to-day operations, to run the pool, to manage the claims for the pool. Lots, these are, very, very busy functions. So you need a dedicated service, an individual to provide that service, sorry. And then you're going to need some external resources. You're going to have to hire actuaries, get some legal help in terms of developing an agreement. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but you're going to have to spend some money up front. And that's often a bit of a challenge for municipalities, to spend money on a feasibility study, to hire external professionals, not easy to do. Another challenge, political. Got to have a lot of commitment, right, from the participating municipalities. So sometimes, local municipalities work together well, sometimes they don't. And as well, there's delegated authority. So what you do is you typically set up a separate board. This board is now responsible for managing the pool. So at Waterloo, and back in the day, we had all the area treasurers sit together and manage the pool. The responsibility for insurance was delegated to this board. And that means, and here's a good example, is what happens, when you go to the marketplace, you have one policy that covers the pool, one liability policy, one property policy, one auto policy that covers the pool. This policy, the results of let's say an RFP when you go to market, are not presented back to the municipalities to approve. It's basically up to the board to approve the insurance proposal that they've received, or the insurance renewal terms that come from the provider. So there's a delegated authority. So sometimes it's hard for individual municipalities to delegate to a separate board. So that's, again, another challenge. Another challenge is risk appetite. I talked about transferring risks. So all of a sudden, if your municipality has a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 deductible, you may be thinking of a collective deductible of yourself up to 50, and then the pool up to 500. So, you have to have a greater risk assumption, risk appetite. We are going to take on more risk. We are now paying for those specific claims ourselves. So there's some pretty big hurdles. And I think those are the ones that are typically a challenge, and why we actually don't see more local pools operating in Ontario. So a few more details. Bit of a time check. Okay, we're not too bad. So how do you establish a local pool? So we talked about those challenges, but again, this initial feasibility study is really going to define what you need to do, right? You'll have to get an actuary involved. They'll look at your 10-year claims history collectively. They'll recommend maybe some options, or recommend one option, and it's not an option, recommend one structure to say, you know what, you need a $500,000 deductible. Everybody's going to have a minimum deductible of this level. We might have some variation on deductibles. Then they'll set up what the levy is, and your individual levy will cover one the cost of expenses for the pool, the cost of paying for those claims between the local deductible and the deductible for the pool, and again, those expenses and whatnot. So those levies, they'll have recommendation on those individual levies that have to be set up. So it's quite a complex, if you will, a financial structure. So you do need an actuary to help you out in those situations. So as part of the feasibility study, and as well, you need to have an agreement. You need what's called a subscribers agreement or a members agreement. You need some legal help to set that up. You have to set up your structure. Who's on the board? Are you going to have equal votes? Does the municipality who's paying, $300,000 into the pool have the same sort of vote as somebody who's spending $1 million into the pool, right? So those are kind of, difficult challenges sometimes. And you'll have to establish some rules about, how you join the pool, how you leave the pool, providing, a notice to individuals. What's the notice period? If I want to leave the pool, is that 6 months? Is that a year? Is that 2 years? Those key elements have to be set up front, right? Other things that you're going to have to decide, what's going to be the organizational structure and where is the pool located? So, that's often a very political discussion. What pool, where is the pool going to be housed? At what municipality? Is it going to be the county region? Is it going to be the larger municipality? Sometimes that's a political discussion. And as I mentioned earlier, one policy, covers the pool, so it's one policy. It covers the entire pool. It establishes the deductible for the entire pool. So you're getting one policy, not 8 or 10 or how many members you have in the pool. And then you have to set up a plan, a budget. You'll have your local deductible, you'll have a pool layer. How are you handling claims? Are you going to hire on your own adjusters? And how are you going to handle, the legal cost on those claims that you are going to manage? 300,000, 400,000 trip and fall or smaller MVA. You're going to need some legal help. You'll have some administration costs. You'll do some of your own risk management. You're going to be investing those dollars and you'll need some actuarial help every year to make sure you're setting up the proper reserves on those. And some accounting as well. And clearly, I think you need a financial statement every year that you can present back to your own councils to say, this is how the pool is performing. And then, at the end of the day, you're going to have to monitor these results over a longer period of time. So after 1 year, it's really going to be hard to determine how well the pool is doing. Municipal business is long tail claims. You get claims that can liability claims last 5, 10, 15 years. So sometimes it takes a while to determine how well your pool is actually working. Critical success factors of local pools. Clearly, you can see that we need a lot of a lot of commitment, both political and administrative. You got to do your due diligence. You need that feasibility study, right? Another key piece is you really need a project champion. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of effort. You need a project manager who can pull this all together, sell it to each local municipality, sell it to the upper tier, all the participants. I was fortunate back in the day. We had a risk manager at the region of Waterloo, so he did a lot of. Craig Smith was his name, retired now. He did a lot of the heavy lifting, but there's a lot of politics and a lot of work at the administrative political level to actually get this off the ground. And the other factor is you need a lot of patience. This is a long-term initiative. You get some long tail claims. So this you have to look at these, the performance of the pool over a longer period of time. And if it's run well and all things being equal, will generate some stability. And one thing I'd want to highlight this, all things being equal, and that's kind of always a wonderful qualifier. But when you look at that comment, it really is all about if you have the same performance as before as you are having now, then hopefully, you can manage a little bit better and, you will see some stability in your premiums. If you actually implement some good risk management practices and you have better claims history or performance, than your history, then you'll generate a lot of stability and you'll potentially there is a potential to save money. But having said that, you could have poorer performance. So, under this example, let's say, collectively, these 10 municipalities had historically 3 large MVAs, $5 million claims over that past 10 years. But unfortunately, because of new people, because of weather, you end up having 6 big MVA claims at $5 million a pop. In the following 10 years, your performance will deteriorate. So some things are beyond your control. So I did say it will generate stability, all things being equal. But if your performance deteriorates, a lot of property claims, a lot of liability claims, there's no guarantee, right? It's hard to predict what your claims experience will be in the future. So I just want to provide that perspective. So next steps, are you interested? Who, and find out who is. Do you want to pursue this? You need some common renewal dates. You should ask your insurer to assist you in pulling some of this together. Clearly at Intact Public Entities, we have a fair amount of experience in that. And then you should appoint a municipal implementation team. If you're serious about this, dedicate some resources to this. And, I think probably the best advice I can give you is talk to existing pool risk managers. They've been doing it for a long time. They understand how pools work. You can learn a lot from those individuals that are operating the 2 pools in Ontario. So kind of went through that fairly quickly. Wanted to give you kind of a high level understanding of the marketplace, and as well, pools specifically. Maybe we can turn it over to questions.
Thanks, Larry. And in fact, there are quite a few questions, so I'm going to just start right into it. So the first question is, can a municipality join an existing pool, or do they have to look at setting up a separate one?
Well, you have to ask those 2 individual pools that are in operation. So I think there is a possibility of that happening, but they have some very specific rules around that. So again, clearly approach the 2 existing pools, see what their preference is for it. It's up to those individual pools, quite frankly.
The next question is, it's around understanding the difference between a pool and a reciprocal. So is the pool the same as a reciprocal like OMEX was, or IROC, the healthcare insurance reciprocal?
They have some similarities, but they are different. So a reciprocal is typically an insurance company, right? And so you're much more highly regulated. And in reciprocals, I think some of the challenge has been, they have the ability to do retroactive assessments. So they are different because of all the administration clearly around those insurance companies. So I would say they're insurance companies light, pools are, and reciprocals are more of the insurance nature. So pools and reciprocals are quite a bit different, less administration, and usually they're much smaller.
Okay, the next question I'm just going to answer quickly was who the existing 2 pools are. So it's the region of Waterloo and the region of Durham. The next question is, sorry, could you speak to retros? Is there ever a situation where municipalities have to make additional contributions to the pool?
So I don't think in the existence of the 2 pools that are in place has there ever been a retro assessment. I don't think that's the case. I know that's the case for the first 10 years I was with Waterloo Regions Pool. But so typically they don't have retro assessments. What happens though, if you do have poor performance, you will see a spike in your premiums. So it's kind of on a go forward basis, you'll see that spike. So if you have claims, you got to pay somehow, right? So when I look back, they may look forward. Okay, so you won't necessarily have a retro assessment, but you might see your premiums and your levies go up individually.
Okay, the next question is, you talked a lot about the politics around creating the pool and how hard it is. What's it like after the pool's established?
It was really good, actually. So we settled the temperature on insurance. We reported back with the financial statements. we were very conservative in how we managed the pool, and we wanted to make sure it was going to be a success. So we generated some surpluses, and quite frankly, I can speak to specifically experience at the Region of Waterloo. It went really well, and there was less political discussion around it. I think we were able to develop a very successful pool, and by tabling the financial statements and saying, here are the reserves, here are the here's the surplus, stabilization of premiums, and oh, by the way, here's a dividend because we're doing quite well. Here's some money back. He puts a smile on the politician's face. So I think they had a lot of confidence in the way it was managed. You have to manage it conservatively. You don't go in saying we're going to save a lot of money. If you can, put those dollars away, build up a bit of a base, get some stability in the pool. I think you gain the confidence of political councils. And so afterwards, it was kind of like night and day, quite frankly. But you got to do it right.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying, Larry, in terms of the municipal objective in establishing this pool is that longer term focus, right? And getting towards stability. That's really
absolutely.
As opposed to a knee-jerk reaction to the current environment, if you will.
You got to be in it for the long game. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I got another question again about who the other pool is. So again, it's Waterloo Region and Durham Region.
And their local municipalities.
Yeah, and the area municipalities, that's true. So this question, I'm hoping you understand, Larry. What makes the standards for risk management increase?
Well, I think what you want to do in a pool is you want to make sure you have that expertise in-house. So you have a dedicated risk manager, and the risk manager is going to go out there and say, are you folks all following the minimum maintenance standards? Are you, getting educated on, proper practices for, building permits? Do you have a program to, fix your sidewalks so you have less trip and falls? So you bring up your level of expertise, you implement new things at the municipalities, you monitor their performance. So again, you eliminate risks, you mitigate risks, reduce your claims, better performance. But you have to hire a risk manager, dedicated responsibility. A lot of municipalities in Ontario don't have dedicated risk managers. They can afford one. And so sometimes insurance is 2 or 3 or 5% of somebody's job. It's hard to be a good risk manager when it's 5% of your job, right? Mm-hmm. Dedicated resources.
So in the case of the townships or the area municipality townships in the region of Waterloo, this somewhat extended the capacity then of the local staff, right? In terms of having that dedicated risk manager.
Absolutely. So one of the beauties of this is often municipalities who don't have access to a risk manager will now. This will help them. This will help with their performance. So that I probably didn't emphasize that enough. I'm glad we asked that question. That's a big deal. It's important.
So there was a follow-up question to that. How does the risk manager for the pool affect the member municipalities' risk management divisions?
Well, it's going to be tailored, so one, how does it affect their risk management divisions? So, in Waterloo's case, there were 2, one at the region and one at a larger municipality. Basically, there was a couple of risk managers. They split up the territories, and one of the risk managers serviced 4 municipalities, the other serviced the other 4. So, that's got to be something that's articulated in the subscribers agreement in terms of how that structure is going to happen. So those are sometimes some of the political issues you have to navigate when you start up a pool. But at the end of the day, I think the benefit is there were 8 municipalities at the region of Waterloo and the area municipal pool. 6 didn't have dedicated risk managers, right? And mm-hmm. Those 6 municipalities really benefit from that.
Another question is, in terms of critical mass, what is the optimal amount of premiums that should be collected by potential members in terms of setting up a pool when they're thinking about setting up a pool?
Yeah, so I don't have an answer for that. That's a tough question because it's all about math. It's all about numbers. What's the optimal level of premium? What's your claims history? we have some, municipalities that are very, very good and from a claims performance, and they have lower premiums. You have others that have high, performance or high premiums because of their claims performance. So it's really hard to come up with a number. I use a bit of a benchmark of $4 million to $5 million. That's kind of what I've used, but that's really again, a benchmark that putting the old thumb up and saying maybe that's a place to start. You have to do the analysis. What is your claims history? Do you have enough premium dollars to support that claims history on a go-forward basis and pay for your expenses, right? Pay for those risk managers and things like that.
Another question just came in. On the pool retention layer, how can the pool incentivize or penalize risk management compliance?
Well, every year you set your levies. Your levies go back to the participating municipalities, and the levy should be based on individual performance within the pool, right? So if there's an individual municipality that says, oh, we were good, then all of a sudden, their claims history on a go-forward basis deteriorates, rates will go up for that municipality, right? So the pool will have to have a mechanism for that, which is part of typically of your subscribers agreement to say, because of performance, you may have poor performance, you may see a 15% increase in that individual pool members rate year over year. Other members may see 3 or 4 or 5% because of their performance, right? So you have that mechanism, you set your own levies.
Right. One more question. What would the minimum size of group that is recommended for a pool? And in this question, it's actually more about number of municipalities as opposed to premium.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Region of Waterloo and the Area Municipal Pool, they had 8 municipalities. I think it's, it should be higher than 5. Durham's a little bit higher. So minimum of 5 or 6. I'm throwing that number out. It's based on premium, right? So you could have 5 or 6 municipalities, but if they collectively have, $1.5 million of premium, you're going to have trouble with the math, right? It's not going to work. So I don't know. It's more about premium than number of municipalities, in my opinion.
Although I would argue that as it gets bigger, it's more complex in terms of the pool itself, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Is there any regulations or standards for these pools?
Well, this part is not regulated because at the end of the day, you're just making it's a really sophisticated group buying initiative, right? It's just one policy covers these 5, 10 municipalities. So again, that's what the beauty of this is. It's a structure that is like an insurance company, but you don't want to be an insurance company. There's a lot of regulations and admin, and it's not affordable. So it's not regulated. And basically you're buying an insurance policy above that, let's say $500,000 deductible, right?
Right.
Very similar to buying insurance, quite frankly, as it was prior to the pool.
So the last question I have here actually goes back to the beginning of your presentation, Larry, where you were talking about claims. And the question is, why are transit types of claims increasing? Any one particular reason?
Well, we've seen some increase in severity, and I did touch base on a few of them, like a few examples. The City of Ottawa had some really big claims that hit the media. Quite frankly, we had some questions about those all the way from Lloyd's of London on some of those. So they had some international notoriety. I think it's just been a bit higher frequency, and there's been some severity as well, some significant severity. So on the transit side, we've noticed a real focus from all the markets that we deal with, and I'm sure it's the same with our competitors, just a more of a focus on transit because of frequency and, more importantly, I think, severity.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the pools, who employs the pool staff? Are they employees of a municipality?
Yes, they are. So you have to pick what municipality that individual is going to be employed by. And in our case, I think it may not be still the case, but we had, I think it was 3 or 4 municipalities or employees, and there might have been 3 different municipalities they were employed by. So there is some flexibility there. Some of these employees may want to remain with their original employer, their original municipality. So, but there was flexibility in that.
Thank you again to Larry for his presentation today. It was very insightful and I think very helpful to some municipalities that are just trying to learn a little bit about insurance pools. I also want to say thank you to all the participants for all your questions and engaging in our polls. And it always helps us in terms of, making sure that we're hitting the right notes in terms of topics and things like that. So thank you for being an engaged audience today. So watch for more webinar opportunities on risk management coming soon. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Judy.